The September 25th Super Bundle Mess Extravaganza. So we had a lot of social media stories this week, but it broke down into government using social media to control things and social media like technology policy business news. Like we're making money at social media. So we have social media stories in both.
Well, I think a better way to put that is government trying to control social media and social media trying to control the population.
So on this week, government misunderstands technology. Today's episode is about how the government is misunderstanding technology and using it to enslave populations. And also the social media.
Sometimes via social media. That's kind of how it goes. So the first one is the good old FCC. I like to lead with the FCC. I like to get the audience good and angry, get their blood up, make them pay attention.
It's like, who thought this was a good idea? Why does this? I don't understand. So the FCC has angered cities and towns with a $2 billion giveaway to wireless carriers. But this is a more interesting story when you dig into it. This has to do with the right-of-way fees. And so like if you run a small town and a wireless carrier wants to come in, you can charge for access to the poles and access to this. But it's not standardized nationally. It's up to every different little town and fiefdom and, creek and hollow and I don't know what else you call small towns.
Well, it is now. So they've set the limit on what you can charge to put one of those cancer-causing
micro towers,
small towers. They're not. I mean, they're not even towers. They're just little boxes, basically, that you hang somewhere.
The thing that was not in this article that the journalists really should have looked into is: does this make it easier for Google to get access to those poles? Because they really fought tooth and nail to get access to those poles.
Well, but I think the real story here is traditionally you could charge whatever you want. So they come into your town and you're like, no, we don't want to put that there. We're going to charge more. Or, this is a bother to us. So you're going to have to pay for us to deal with the bother. But what the FCC has done is they've set a standard fee and it's low. It's like $100 or $200. And then a maintenance fee, which is also so much a month. That's very low. And you can't charge more than that or you'll be sued by the FCC. So basically the big providers can put these boxes wherever they want. What's $100 to Verizon?
Yeah.
Nothing at all. And the municipalities are kind of powerless to deal with how annoying that might be.
something states' rights.
And of course we talked about last week, there are the states that don't want the 5G towers anywhere. And that might be bad science. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's hard to say. But
obviously cell towers use ionizing radiation.
And maybe that's how they can fight back. Is like, okay, if you only want to pay us $200, we're afraid of cancer. You can't do this. But you bump that up to like 10 grand. Maybe we don't care so much about the cancer.
It's there's probably a lot more not in my backyard as opposed to cancer. But yeah, it's this story actually could be for good or evil, and this is why I'm like, as corrupt as Ajit Pai seems to be, just based on outward observations. This is obviously in the best interests of larger corporations, but it might also happen to be in the best interests of people, maybe, possibly.
I don't know. You apply the old who benefits question to it, and immediately you see that they calculate it at $2 billion. So basically it's a subsidy for 5G. Because the taxpayers, if there is extra maintenance, then now it falls to the taxpayers because they can't be billed.
Well, I can see that if you're in, a hollow or a creek or a burrow or something, that the maintenance cost for maintaining those 5G towers would be a lot less than, say, New York City, where you just pop open the sidewalk and it's, a veritable data center under every slab of concrete.
What about that great GIF where the guy opens up the radio tower and it's full of nuts with squirrels? Who pays for that? That's going to be taxpayer money now.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pi. Now switching over to a big block of EU and or UK. I don't think we should separate them yet. Let's go wait till that's official.
We got to have the level 1 Brexit celebration. This is maybe our 100th episode too, so I don't know.
Who knows?
Maybe 101st episode, depending on if you count from 0.
So yeah, Ireland, we've been talking about this story forever, and this is a little bit of a milestone, but we're years away from settling this. Basically, they've moved some money from Apple's account to an escrow, but nobody's getting it yet.
So Ireland agreed to give Apple a sweetheart deal if Apple put some call centers or some data centers or something in Ireland. And that amounted to about $14 billion. And the EU said, oh, wait, Ireland, you didn't actually have the power to do that because those are EU taxes. Those are not, taxes for Ireland. So we are still owed $14 billion. Obviously, Ireland is not going to pay that. The money's in escrow. We've covered all this before. I think the more interesting story is that Apple has so much cash that it's not worth the headache to argue over $14 billion.
But it's not $14 billion. Something like $2.7 billion of that is EU interest.
Okay, so it's like $11.3 billion or whatever.
Well, $3 billion is a lot of money to everybody except Apple. That's crazy. And you got to think that, well, if Apple wins, which seems unlikely, does that interest go away?
You ever go out with somebody that friend, and it's like, you're going to split the appetizer or whatever, and it comes out to like $5, and you're like, hey, did you ever get that $5? And it's just like, it's just so much of a headache to deal with them that it's like, you know what? I just don't even care about the $5 anymore. It's like that, but on billions upon billions of, like, that's how a cavalier Apple is about the $5 billion or whatever.
But the other school of thought is you relentlessly hound them about it so that they leave you alone and dodge you, and then you avoid them for the rest of your life at the cost of $5.
We know which way the EU plays it.
Oh, they want that. They don't want Apple out because they want to keep collecting those fees. They're like the credit card companies. They want Apple to keep resisting and making those late payments so they can pocket that money. Well, continuing on in the EU is, they are kind of on a war path with the big tech companies. They don't like them. And so they're taking steps, and the first in their crosshairs is Amazon.
The European Competition Commission has started looking at merchants on Amazon's and the use of their data. So this is more to do with like customer data and how merchants can get hooked up into the Amazon place than really what Amazon is doing internally. It almost seems like if you as a merchant are cooperating with Amazon, it puts your competitors at a disadvantage because it's you plus Amazon.
Well, I think another thing they're arguing is that Amazon they control the marketplace. So they get the customer data. Whether it's you doing it or whether it's a third party doing it, as Amazon, you get the data. So then you apply that data to better serve the customers and figure out what they want, but the third parties don't benefit from that. So that's part of it.
Well, Walmart has been doing that since the 80s.
But you can't, if as a small business, you can't go to Walmart and be like, hey, I'm going to be a storefront. I'm going to set up a tent outside and just, catch your customers as they come in.
Well, it's more like the deal that Lando had with the Empire, where Walmart is like, "Ooh, we want to carry your product, but here's our terms," and then they just sort of keep altering the terms until the company that made the product goes out of business, and Walmart buys the IP for a song.
Yeah, but that's a little bit different because in not every case, Amazon's not always doing the fulfillment.
Oh, I was thinking more like Whole Foods. Like eventually, they're like, "Wow, this market segment makes a lot of money. Let's take it over."
No, this is like when you go on Amazon, you're buying something that's like sold by Amazon and fulfilled by Bob, or sold by Bob and fulfilled by Bob, and then that's not a Prime item, so you quietly ignore it. So Bob's customer data and transaction data is being gobbled up by Amazon, but he benefits not at all from that.
Well, so the next step would be for Amazon to just take over Bob's market
Right,
segment.
they figure out how to better serve Bob's customers and do so.
Yes.
At the expense of Bob's data.
That's what Walmart has been doing forever.
So, you mean like with the great value stuff?
Yeah.
It's still a little bit different because and I guess in both cases you're not forced to do it, but there is that idea that like, I don't know if it's still like this, but getting your product into Walmart was
I'm going to retire.
That's the golden ticket because there's so many of them. Well, a little bit of good news. Mostly it's just, the EU stomping on people's throats who may or may not deserve it. But here's one I think we can all agree definitely deserved it. But that silver lining is so thin.
Equifax has been slapped with the UK. This is excitingly reported.
It's a maximum. Must be huge, right?
$500,000.
$500,000. What is that? How many people? It was like 20 million?
The article was quick to point out that under GDPR, it could be 4% of Equifax's gross profit, which would be a much better fine.
But that's literally pennies per victim. It's a shockingly small amount. So yeah.
I mean, okay, so actually I'm rethinking this. It's like the executive that was looking at it and they were like, if we spend $5 more on our computer, it's not worth it, because if we get, if we lose all of our data and we get fined, it's going to cost less than maintaining our computers. The best decision for the shareholders is to keep this thing running with baling wire and duct tape.
Now, the other thing to think about here is this committee, whoever they are, spent over a year looking into this to decide to give it the maximum fine, right? So how much of that $500,000 did they chew through with their salaries and spending and costs?
That's a good point. It's probably over $1 million.
You think we lost money?
We did.
Net?
well, you Euros lost money.
I'm saying the human race.
Oh, the human race.
I don't discriminate based on land boundaries.
Well, that's what that Apple money is going for in that case.
So that's just disgusting. Yeah, and I guess that a lot of the pro GDPR people will champion that and be like, yeah, that's why we did it, so we can hit them next time. But remains to be seen. Now, another thing that the Euros are well, actually, this is the UK. Once again, they're kind of the same right now. They're saying that they're tired of tolerating Bitcoin.
It's time to regulate Bitcoin. This cryptocurrency industry is leaving investors vulnerable. So once again, it's about dumb investors. This stock photo, though, that's an AGP graphics card. What are they doing with an AGP like it was very distracting while reading this article, because it's like they've got Bitcoin's not a coin, okay, whatever. But it looks like they've got it plugged like just on the other side of an old school motherboard with a crappy AGP graphics card.
Well, we've often talked about the ridiculousness of the Bitcoin stock photos. No one knows how to graphically represent a Bitcoin, and they never will. But the thing about this is they're saying that the volatility of the market leaves their poor, unknowing, stupid people. This is always the message. Our people are so stupid. Listen, over here in the UK, bunch of morons. They don't know that the cryptocurrency market is volatile. So we must protect him. We must protect him for these things.
A fool and his money are soon separated. Isn't that like an ancient Chinese proverb?
Well, but this ain't ancient China, they're saying. This is the new world. Time to get with it. They're also talking about the insecurity, and that definitely is something we see every single week.
Yeah.
And it's the big exchanges that are getting hit too, not individuals. So,
I mean, can you imagine the New York Stock Exchange with Equifax's attitude toward IT and security?
Well, here, you can't make that comparison with security, but with volatility, you ever look at penny stocks? Well, those would go to zero real fast, and you can lose a lot of money. So I don't think the volatility argument is very strong. Maybe the security argument, but again, you have to wonder, what are taxpayers going to invest to have these people regulate Bitcoin, and what are they going to do to help?
I love the penny stocks where I'll get an email and it's like, this thing's going to the moon. And it's like, only because somebody's pumping a bunch of money into it so they can get out.
Yeah. They had that great arc on the Sopranos webistics where like they literally had guns to the head of the guys on the phones trying to sell it. Well, the EU, following on in the EU stories, so many this week. The Justice Commissioner, yes, Justice Commissioner, that's a thing. She's quit Facebook and described it as a channel of dirt.
This is so exciting because it's you can tell that this person was probably not super experienced with computers, but she was sort of expecting like the Facebook machinery to be more humanized, maybe a little bit more anthropomorphized. Like, this is a thing that's permitted on this platform. I don't think she understood.
Well, it was individuals hating her, and I wonder why. Why would individuals send terrible messages to this woman because of her position in the government? Who would have anything bad to say about her position? It makes no sense. But it wasn't Facebook doing it. Like, what does she expect Facebook to do? To like filter and make them nice?
Yes. They literally expect that a keyboard, like something will pop out of your keyboard and inject you with happy pills. And that's not happening is the problem.
So yeah, she quit her Facebook account and spoke out against it, and that was, while talking about regulating and getting in front of this and how awful it is, and human beings should not be subjected to people that don't like them. And speaking of Facebook and the government, I think they're trying to make a show of force here because they don't want more attention, and so they've decided to create a quote unquote war room.
I think this is so. Our regulators. This is a show for our regulators. But if there is some sort of threat from a foreign government, they're just looking at this and laughing.
Yeah. Do you think there's fighting allowed in the war room?
Do you think there's a code of conduct in the war room?
Oh, there's probably several. So they're literally building a new room. It's like on the Facebook campus, you can't find an entry conference room to use for a couple of weeks. I don't know. But this is, pre-election. They're going to really double down on, they're monitoring all the major news channels and all the stuff that's going on Facebook. And they're really looking to real time try to find people trying to influence the election.
And this is going to be somehow a good thing? Like, what prevents somebody from using this power to subtly manipulate the election any which way they want?
Yeah, well, influencing,
what's the difference?
When you say influencing an election as if that's a bad thing, what is campaigning?
What are ads?
I mean,
we will make people eat pork bellies, by God.
Obviously.
And also women smoking.
People have a vested interest in who wins an election, and whether they be American citizens or Putin. And that's been called campaigning. I guess the transparency maybe needs to be there. But Facebook is not looking to add transparency so much. I mean, their ad platform still leaves a lot to be desired, as pointed out by the ACLU.
Are you buying ads on Facebook? Guess what? You can exclude women, including if you have a job ad. And apparently recruiters are like, let's just not advertise to women.
Yeah, now they've been criticized a lot in the past for the race-based ad targeting. And they were sort of like, oh, okay, we'll do away with that. But now they're being attacked on gender. Because it's a self-serve ad program, and you can just check boxes. Here's who I want to see my ad. And Facebook knows so much about you that they can do that. So male, female was up there. Do you think they had only two genders? Because that would be even worse, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's funny because the actual gender Facebook thing is more than two options. But I
bet the ad one isn't, though.
I was thinking more about so there's a law that we have in America that you can't advertise a job that is it's illegal to say that this job is for men only or this job is for women only. I guess that's the thing. But you can say that there's certain physical requirements, like you must be able to lift 40 pounds over your head or whatever. And
but they weren't doing that. This is just secretly you would say, don't show this to women.
Yes. But I think about products like feminine hygiene products, like products that are only for women. Would you exclude advertising for men in that case? And would there be a problem with that?
Are you asserting that to be a woman, you have to have a vagina? Because that is hate speech, and I will not tolerate it.
That's a preview of things coming later.
That's already happening everywhere.
I'm just going by the numbers here. I'm not,
Listen, numbers. It's not about numbers. It's about how you feel.
It's not. I'm not saying that you can't that I identify this way. Options should be taken away from the checkbox. I'm just saying that if you fill out the checkbox a certain way, you're probably not interested in certain other things, like statistically.
You're on the razor's edge.
I am. Speaking of other people on the razor's edge.
Well, I think they're way over the edge. You remember the travel ban that people were real upset about? Well, Google, they had a little internal discussion saying that they might want to find ways around it.
This is another one of those times where Level 1 has deliberately juxtaposed some different news stories. So Google workers discuss tweaking search functions to counter travel ban. This sounds like functionally, the functional requirements of this feature, quote unquote, of the search engine sounds an awful lot like what Facebook is doing with their war room.
Yeah, this targeted Middle Eastern and Latino people who would maybe be affected by the travel ban. So if you searched for things that that made them think you were one of those people, they were thinking, they never did this, by the way, but they were thinking about adding links to try and help you fight back against the travel ban as their way of striking back against a policy they disagreed with.
So is it that the war room and this kind of feature would accurately represent and preserve the will of the people, Or is it subtly influenced by the people who are implementing these features?
Well, a lot of the new movement asserts that the will of the people is incorrect. And it's sort of like that.
We must re-educate them.
It's the right side of history argument. And, I mean, slavery may be a good example of that, because a lot of the people were pro-slavery, and that was probably wrong. But
probably.
It is. It's sort of like like you say, it's a small group of people deciding what's right and wrong. And you open up a history book, it doesn't work. You can't do it like that. And speaking of which...
Speaking of opening history books...
A small group of people being the attorneys general of various states and, of course, sessions are equally against the big tech companies as the EU.
The Louisiana AG has literally asked Jeff Sessions to break up Google, Facebook, and Twitter. And it's just... I don't... reading this, I get the feeling this guy could not be more of a Luddite.
Probably true. Now his argument is that this is the same as United Oil, which was it was the early 20th century, like 1911 or something like that. We broke them up because they had more money than anybody.
I don't think Google or Facebook or Twitter have hired thugs to go harass politicians and let them know that they can be killed.
But you know what's funny is who's not mentioned here are Amazon and Apple, the two big dogs, number one and number two in the universe.
The $1 trillion companies.
Yeah, I mean the
$1 trillion club.
And maybe you're afraid of them, so maybe they're paying to have the other ones broken up. But yeah, I wonder would it really be that good of a thing to break them up? How would Gmail spin off to its own entity?
I don't even know how that would work.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you would keep them all separate, because the interconnectivity of the whole thing would still need to exist.
We could go to APIs. Actually, if anything, Amazon would be more readily be able to be broken up because they have concentrated so heavily on API interfaces between their business units that really not a lot would change. Like the Amazon Web Services stuff could be its own thing.
That's true.
And all of the Amazon business units that use the API interface for that would continue. I think Amazon's probably still even ahead of Google in terms of the API interfaces between its business units for doing things.
But then you get into a situation where, is the Amazon store realistically ever going to consider a competitor for their data hosting services? I think they're still going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Maybe from a tax standpoint, we get more money from them. And we do undertax them. But then there's that global competition.
Yeah.
How are they going to go to Ireland? Because Ireland plays ball. We know they do. They are game for some taxes.
I am very surprised how hard Ireland is fighting the EU on this.
It's so funny. It's like, you will not give us money. We will not take $14 billion. You'll have to stuff that $14 billion into our cold, dead hands.
Maybe it's like the poorest parts of America. Maybe Ireland is so poor that they're like, look, we'll take, $100 million, and that's going to be life-changing for literally every one of our citizens. But we're not so greedy that we'll take $14 billion.
But it's a smart, if you take a $14 billion payment, put it right in the pocket of the government, what's going to happen? They're going to waste it.
Yeah.
They're going to spend it, and it's going to be stupid stuff. It's going to be those pork bills. But you create the subsequent number of jobs that 14 billion represents, and your economy gets a lot better.
Yeah.
So
good job, Ireland.
Could be a smart thing. Well, not to be left out in terms of discrimination, all the big tech companies, they like to discriminate on an equal basis.
I love this story.
That's the great thing about them.
This is IBM, and we've covered this story before, but discovery is happening now. IBM is being sued for age discrimination after firing thousands of workers. And literally, if you look, all of the stuff up till now, when you looked at it, was like, well, this does seem kind of ageist. I mean, it seems like IBM was sort of culling, some stuff here. And you could make the argument that, okay, the old dog's working on the mainframe stuff. There's not as much business in the mainframe business unit. Let's wind that down, and it'll be fine. But there's a lot of really amazing stuff that has come out from this lawsuit, like a lot of old dogs working on some of the most profitable teams in the company. And all of the people that were over 45 were fired.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the people in charge at these tech companies believe that they have to chase that brass ring of Google and Facebook.
Yeah.
They need a young, hip workforce because that's the only way they're going to be able to compete with this new tech world. Yeah. But once you undermine all of the infrastructure and you have all the blue hairs, what's going to happen?
It will fail.
Somebody has to step in and fill that gap.
The other thing that's coming out of this lawsuit is that a lot of the younger workers are willing to work like 60, 80-hour weeks, and they're willing to just... IBM can't do some of these things legally. Like, they can't force the situation. And a lot of the older workers are like, you know what, I'm putting in like my 40, my 45 because that's reasonable, and I'm not going to put up with this BS. And then like management tries to have a fire drill, and everybody, it's like, oh, you know, gosh, we're going to lose the customer if we don't do this, and like tries to freak everybody out. And the old people that have been through that every other week for the last 50 years are like, eh. And so somehow that's parlayed into, we got to fire those people because they're not team players. But that's not going to work out for them in court.
You know, I never add them because it's not necessarily tech news. But on all the various places we look for tech news, they constantly have these articles where it's like, university study shows that we should have a 3-day work week, or we should have like a 5-hour day, and life will be so much better. And it's like, wow, talk about ivory tower. That is just never going to happen because of things like this.
Yeah.
You know, there's always somebody who's going to be willing to do the crappy job.
Yeah.
And they're just going to boot you out and pull them in.
Yep. Thanks, IBM.
Which is unfortunate. Well, it wouldn't be business news. Actually, this is government news, right? It wouldn't be government news either unless we talked about Tesla.
We got 3 Tesla stories this week, I think.
Only one of them in this one, though. And in this one, this is the Department of Justice has now gotten involved in the funding secured scandal.
There was somebody last week in the news that was like, you guys didn't cover this. And it's like, yeah, it came out kind of late, so we didn't include it. But
September 18th, that was what, Tuesday?
Yeah.
So we couldn't have.
It's, well, I think they announced they were going to do this on Friday just to see how, and then it was covered in more mainstream media by like Bloomberg by Monday or Tuesday. But yeah, that whole funding secured thing, turns out that's a crime.
Yeah. Securities fraud. Now, usually, if they play this like they usually do, when a big company does something terrible like this,
he's just a genius. He doesn't know any better. He didn't mean any harm.
That'll kind of be like if they play it fair. Like, let's say that Pepsi did this, they would pay a fine. That would be substantial, but not really in terms of their overall profit. But because Musk is who he is, they seem to be getting more pushback from the public.
Yeah,
and for the people who lost money, because those short sellers are very vocal. And they
I can't wait for the next quarter earnings, because they're going to be screaming hard if Tesla's still doing well.
Well, the stock definitely fell on that news. The SEC, this is different than the SEC probe, which we talked about before. So that's the securities probe. The DOJ probe is like, no, this was a criminal act. So that's not just fines, that's possible criminal charges.
I'm hearing all the details around this, and I'm visualizing the scene in the movie Mystery Men where they go and meet the mad scientist, and it's like, this is why we need a garden variety CEO instead of a mad CEO. And Musk is just laughing in the background.
Wow, that's a reference, isn't it? Well, the Senate, they're terrified. And what are they terrified of? The hackers.
The government, would you say that Luddite government freak out this week is at about a 9.5 out of 10?
Well, the elections are coming up, so, you got to make all the noise you can.
There was this is the one where they switched to iPhones, isn't it? They're switching from Android to iPhones. I thought that was an interesting side effect of this.
I don't know if that's, a correlation or causation, but they're just basically saying that we are constantly getting hacked. And sure enough, somebody did some study and it was like, yes, you are constantly getting hacked. But that's true of most big businesses, anybody with money or power, of course. Yeah, there's going to be a constant attempts to hack you. That's why you have to understand security, and they clearly don't. So they just sort of sit back and cry and moan and get hacked.
I can't set my password to Banana One. Why can't I set my password to Banana One? Why is that insecure? I don't understand. It's like, turns out that's what you do when you want to give Russia control of your phone. I'm honestly, with the whole like Russia sleeper agent thing, I'm surprised that. I mean, that would be a great plausible deniability story. It's like somebody gets in real high and they just set their password to something ridiculous like, Pooty Poot 123, and then it's all just downhill from there in terms of like state secrets being slurped up.
But That's probably been happening for 40 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, of course. And the key thing is, there is no chance that our spies aren't doing the same thing.
Yes.
We sort of, we use Russia as this boogeyman hiding under the bed. And yet, who's in the bed? Yet another, probably better funded boogeyman with better technology. We talk about copyright violations a lot, and it happens constantly, and every once in a while there's a lawsuit, but rarely does anybody do prison time for this.
So the guy who uploaded the Deadpool movie to Facebook may get 6 months in prison. Jeez.
Now there's some mitigating factors here. He posted the entire Deadpool movie to he downloaded it from a torrent, put it on Facebook, and you could just watch it on the Facebook player. Millions of people watched it. But obviously a lot of people were like, dude, you can't do this. They're going to sue you into oblivion. And his response was, lol, no, they won't. And then he started another channel that was like free movie uploads, many more to come. So it's hard to argue that he didn't know what he was doing. I think he knew very well what he was doing. Now, should copyright violations ever result in prison? Maybe that's another argument. But
it would be funny if it was easy to, like, if it was actually easy to deal with your media library. Your grandma accidentally posts, an iTunes movie to Facebook. That would be kind of funny.
She probably wouldn't go to jail.
No, I don't think she would.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens to that guy. His big plan for getting a lot of friends on Facebook by posting movies, it worked for a brief amount of time. So I hope he enjoyed. He also mentioned the only thing that's going to happen is I'm going to get more famous. It was like a quote that he had. So this guy really didn't understand the situation.
That poor guy, man.
Well, video game loot boxes, we've talked about them in the past, and I will continue to assert there is no difference between a video game loot box and a collectible unknown item that you buy.
A Beanie Baby.
And a blind box. Well, you know what you're getting with Beanie Babies.
Oh.
But I'm talking about like Pokemon cards.
Oh, where you just buy, or Magic cards. Or
and not only, and in those instances, there is a rarity system built into the business model, just like there is with loot boxes. So I don't really see the difference. Loot boxes are terrible. They're a plague upon gaming, but should they be gambling is the question.
Do you think anybody will ever say, man, this story in this game really spoke to me in a way that it wouldn't have without loot boxes?
Well, I think most games with loot boxes aren't story-based. They're competitive.
So just time killers.
And that's, well, like, what's that Diablo clone we've been playing?
Path of Exile.
So many of those people have the little pets and wings and stuff. And that's all
you have to pay for
microtransactions. It's not loot boxes,
but
it's microtransactions. So it's not really the same argument, but it is. It's like, wow, this is a free game, and there's no way to get those in game. I don't think, but people are willing to throw that money just so you can see their avatar with this other stuff. So people do like it. Now the argument here is gambling is an addiction officially, and this preys upon that. Weakness.
You're gonna roll the dice. It's like, oh, I got this thing.
Yeah, it keeps bringing you back. But I think most of the mechanics in games are meant to, it's that feedback loop that keeps you endorphins.
It's a slippery slope. I mean, first it's loot boxes, and then it's pay to win.
And this is sort of like defending the Klan in terms of free speech. Like, you don't want to defend them because loot boxes, like, oh, microtransactions, another plague upon the gaming industry. A horrible, horrible thing. But I don't know. Where does it stop? It's an interesting argument. But it does seem like more and more governments are going toward calling that gambling. And should the government be stopping us from gambling is another question.
They do in a lot of places.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. But I'm saying it's your money. You should be able to do what you want with it. And if you can't handle it, if you have a serious enough addiction that might bankrupt you, you probably shouldn't be gaming. Maybe that's just not for you. Read a book.
Turns out.
And California, here's another, maybe a little silver lining. Sad that the government has to get involved here, but...
California is going to ban terrible default passwords on connected devices. So you can't have you can't manufacture a router or something where every router has the same password, because as it turns out, criminals will exploit that and then you've got a botnet, and then it's really bad.
That's going to make it real tough to, dig something out of the trash 10 years from now and get it going again.
There's got to be some way to reset the password, and manufacturers don't want to build that in either, and so it's just...
Or, how would you ever do that if they're not the same password? And if it has to hit a server, forget it. That server's going to be offline in 5 years.
Usually, the password's based on, a MAC address or a serial number. AT&T puts the password on a sticker on the modem. So.
But see, those stickers could get removed.
Yeah.
Things could be filed off.
Yep.
So...
And then it's gone forever.
They made the language in that bill very vague. And some people argue that's a terrible thing because now the government can they interpret it however they want. But other people are saying it's good because government's never going to keep up with security.
Well, pretty soon that law is going to be, you must have a secure password, except for our backdoor password, which must be in all devices, which is pootypoot123.
Yeah, you must have the secure generated password and the government mandated generated password at the same time.
It's like cable modems, because they've got the cable provider password that works as well.
Well, if you're in China, the Chinese love streaming. That's one thing to know about, live streaming.
They've got some kind of games event going on right now.
I can't remember what it was called, but yeah, it might be over by now. But they love to watch people do things on the stream, so much that they ban things like eating bananas and wearing underwear. But one thing that they won't be enjoying is Twitch.
You heard it here first, underwear banned in China. No, this was, whatever game event was happening in China was being streamed on Twitch, because Twitch did work in China. Not great.
Well, it was it was the Chinese games or something like that, and there was an esports Asian games. The Asian games were going on in China. There's an esports arm of that, but the local Chinese television didn't carry that.
So they wanted to watch it on stream.
So they watched Twitch.
And it was on Twitch, and that's why Twitch was banned.
Which, I don't think there would be anything, if it's the Asian games happening in China.
Do you think China has a war room for responding to things that are suddenly popular on the internet? So
I think they probably have several buildings. Probably one in each province.
Do you think they could teach anything to Facebook about how to set up an effective war room to be able to respond to it in real time?
Well,
to shape the conversation?
No, because their answer to everything is just we'll just block that. And Facebook's like, well, but what if they get around it like this? And it's like, well, just arrest them in a secret court. What are you not understanding here, Facebook?
Well, we've got the secret courts. I mean, we've got...
Well, luckily Facebook doesn't have access to those.
Speaking of people teaching people stuff in China...
Yeah. Or China teaching American tech companies how to do things. Maybe it's a better way to put that.
Google suppresses memo revealing plans to closely track search users in China because, again, that's the first ingredient to building some sort of control mechanism. Let's call it a war room for the distribution of information.
This is a great graphic. Is this the memory hole? And that's Dragonfly, of course. And it's all in that communist sort of... That's a really great image. Who is this? The Intercept. Good job, Intercept. So the idea here... We've talked about Dragonfly. It's going to be on your phone. And it's going to track your phone number with every search result. And it's going to automatically filter things like Nobel Prize.
Or Tiananmen Square.
But when Google was questioned about it, they were like, we're looking at it. We're thinking it over. We're not sure yet. Well, this memo reveals that it's ready. It's basically done. And they put a huge amount of the workforce working on it. And there's been a lot of internal strife. And Google immediately went to DEFCON 3 to shut down this memo getting out, which obviously failed. But it does show that they are...
There goes their monetization.
They're very committed to Dragonfly. And it's basically ready to go, according to this memo.
That's exciting for a lot of reasons. But the most exciting reasons for that is if you've been following along, you should definitely think about those other stories about the war room and subtle manipulation and whatever your impression of China is.
I saw an article. Some guy predicted that in 3 years, there will basically be two internets. And one of them will be China's internet. And some other countries will also get on board with that. And they'll just be split down the middle. There'll be no interaction between the two of them.
Wow. So that does seem like where we're going.
Yeah. Because how else are they going to maintain that level of control? And if places like Google are willing to build the software to do that,
and run it on their network,
it's very realistic.
Yeah.
Well, if you think back to the inauguration of President Trump, boy, that was a time of unity in this country, wasn't it? Well, they had a problem with the CCTVs because in Washington, D.C., there's one of these on every street corner. The whole place is just blanketed with camera coverage. But somebody got in there and ransomwared practically the entire city. And they weren't very good at it. They left their Gmail. It logged in on one of them. So they caught them and they have been charged.
I think they actually pled guilty. So it was a Romanian guy.
It was a girl, actually.
Or girl, yeah. Was it a girl?
It was a girl.
Wow. So that was exciting. This is all to do with like camera control because it turns out internet connected cameras are some of the most insecure things that you could ever have.
Well, each of those cameras run Windows individually.
So why not?
It wasn't super hard to get into them. They put ransomware on them and tried to get money. And again, they were terrible at it. So they have not been sentenced yet. I think they'll probably get the book thrown at them.
Yeah.
Because the DC internal people, they were like, oh, something's going on. And because of the inauguration, the Secret Service just immediately got involved. And they don't screw around. They found them quick.
I think it's unfortunate that this seems to have been just a garden variety malware scam and not actually, the intelligence apparatus.
It was not Russia. I don't think Putin had any involvement here. That was definitely a headline at the time.
Yeah.
And it was a real like fear-mongering campaign that the media went on talking about those poor cameras.
They have control of our devices. We don't even know how. No, it's just malware.
I mean, they did have control, but it wasn't that difficult.
The devices were also really crappy.
And they still are. Well, we talked about Google and China, and one thing that Google has been getting a lot of pushback on is dealing with China and dealing with the military. What was the name of that drone program they had? It was like something to do with vision.
Yeah, they wanted to do the vision processing system. And it was like, this is not a weapon. This is just to be used for like search and rescue or locate or whatever. And
there was just full-on insurrection. Yeah, it's like, we are not doing this inside Google. And they actually dropped it, or so they say. Maybe they're doing the Dragonfly thing with it, where it's like, we're not doing that, but secretly there's a whole team. Well, the vacuum that was created by that is quick to be filled.
Magic Leap, you may remember as the less than inspiring virtual reality headset that we saw a couple of weeks ago. It's bidding on an Army combat contract for augmented reality, because that seems like that would be a thing.
And I don't know how you go from that little man throwing a rock to full combat vision. But the idea is troops will begin training with this augmented reality. And it's not only is it a heads-up display, but basically it creates enemies as well for training. And then when you get into the field, it overlays actual enemies with the same training enemies. So it's the same experience in combat.
So how long before an enterprising, what was that girl, Romanian? An enterprising Romanian hacks the software and puts that little overlay on your friendlies?
Well, not only that, but what about, it's like you go through the training and you build that muscle memory. And then, you invade, all the insurgents are coming for you. And you pull off the augmented reality and, it's an orphanage.
That's really dark.
Yeah. But that's totally within the realm of possibility. I
could also see the AI like instructing a squad to do stuff and each individual squad member doesn't know what they're doing. And then at the end, it's like, all right, now connect, tab A to slot B, and it's just 8 people. They suddenly assemble a nuclear device. And it's like, guess what? You guys were a suicide squad. Sorry. See ya.
That would be interesting to do that kind of precision work all through augmented reality. But the good news probably is Magic Leap is not going to be able to do this at all. Their technology is garbage.
Yeah. It's like, is this a state-sponsored actor that's taking over our CCTV? It's like, nope, it's just faulty. Is this a state-sponsored actor that's, causing our headgear to, kill soldiers that are friendly? It's like, nope, it's just malware.
And Microsoft is also presumably chasing this contract with their HoloLens. But the other thing about it is both of those products are really not made for extreme conditions. No. And this would have to be all weather.
It would be 10 or 20 years before we could get that thing weatherized to the point that it's going to have to basically be an eye implant or something.
Well, they got the tooth phone. Now they get the AR eye implant. So it can drown out the screams of the children as you're gunning them down.
You're literally living the pyro intro from the Valve game.
Yeah, you get a little pump that pumps endorphins directly in, like in your brain somewhere.
Do you believe in magic?
Every time you get a kill, gives you 2 cc's. Well, now this is a story that...
It's their last government story.
At first, I was feeling like full-on conspiracy about this one because it was a lot of coincidence. But as more facts emerge, maybe legit.
Cody Wilson, who is the 3D printed gun guy, he made the model or whatever, he's been arrested in Taiwan.
Defense Distributed. So
we've covered it before.
They came up with the 3D printed files and made those available, but they also have the ghost gunner that they sell that you can make aluminum parts out of. Well, yeah, he probably had sex with a 16-year-old girl, but it is a little suspicious because he did so on a website.
It requires people to be 18.
Yeah, they claimed a screen for that. So he could have not known. He could have easily not known. And could this girl have been sent by the feds? Could this whole thing have been set up? I think you could argue that it was still probably a bad idea to use sugardaddymeat.com.
Does stuff like this happen way more often than the average citizen realizes?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Do you think if this was just this girl being on this website when she shouldn't have, do you think he's the only guy she's had sex with?
No.
Do you think any of them have been prosecuted?
No.
So he went to Taiwan after he found out. Maybe he was running. Maybe he wasn't. He hadn't been charged with a crime. So technically he wasn't running. And then the charges were made and the Taiwanese government, now they don't extradite, but they decided to cooperate in this instance because his passport was pulled. So he is being returned. He's probably back by now and he will face these charges. It's between 2 and 20 years.
Wow.
And that's like a $500 fine on top of that, which is a weird thing for underage sex. So yeah, that's a sad day for the Second Amendment freedom movement. But I think this was just some really poor decision making.
So you can get those 3D printed files online. Somebody don't upload them to Thingiverse because I guess there's still a court case going on for that as well.
Well, I think they have some sort of injunction that they can't do it, but for other individuals, you're not prevented from providing them. I don't take my word for that. Look into your local laws before you spread those files around. But they were appealed to be okay, and then there was like an emergency injunction pending the settlement of that case.
What a mess. So what we got tomorrow is business.
Tomorrow is purely business. We went ahead and mixed social media and a couple other smaller ones.
There's a lot of tech news in the business news as well from the business angle. So
that's where the bulk of it usually is.
Yeah. Because the new NVIDIA cards are out and no one can buy them. Only media.
So stay tuned for it.
It's 9:26 and it's the Level 1 news. And today's breakdown is going to be technology and business news. Although business first and then technology. And then Fridays is going to be nonsense and chaos.
It's kind of mixed up. I mean, does anything happen in the tech world that isn't business related ultimately?
Ultimately. I mean, that's usually the context that you get here. Our headline story, of course.
Well, that's a good argument. Not really business related, but certainly a knock-on effect. Right. Well,
I mean, there is a business relationship with our headline story, which is the Linux Code of Conduct.
This is probably the biggest story of the week if you're into Linux at all, and certainly maybe the most controversial.
Yes, but highly controversial. A lot of people are freaking out, but I don't know that there's a reason to freak out yet.
I think there might be a reason to freak out.
It's like how this is going to go. How this is likely to go is probably reason to freak out.
Well, it follows a pattern because already they've gone after at least one guy who he's a maintainer in one of the parts of the networking of some kind of Linux distribution, and they have said that he must be removed because he is a rape apologist based on what he said on Twitter.
But the stuff that he said on Twitter, I read it. I didn't get that from it.
It doesn't matter what he said. If he said, if he quoted, "I apologize on behalf of all rapists," it shouldn't matter. Because you got to think about, this is the cycle. The cycle is your entity is intolerant. You must make changes to tolerate us. And then they move in. And then the first thing they do, we do not want to tolerate this guy. He must be removed.
Well, that seems like that's against the thing that they said that they were going to do.
Gosh, does it? So the story is, if you haven't been following it, there is this, I forget the girl's name. Ada is her middle name, right?
Oh, yeah. I don't know.
So she's championing this, the end of meritocracy in Linux. It's too male, it's too white, and there's too much emphasis on skill rather than...
We've seen what an operating system is like without programmer skill. It's not pretty.
But it's well known that Linus Torvalds, being the avatar of all the Linux community,
gentle patriarch,
bunch of assholes, unbearable people, and maybe right a lot of the time, but also assholes 100% of the time.
It's like they're the code programmer versions of Dr. House.
And very, very bad at human relations. Shockingly bad.
I would say just manners.
And probably not people you want to be around most of the time. But in some cases, not all cases, you can be an asshole without being a genius. But in a lot of cases, or enough, very effective.
Yeah.
And
like
that's
Dr. House.
That's what it comes down to, is...
Who's a fictional character.
It's the most secure operating system. I think you could say that objectively, all right? It runs the internet. You can say that objectively.
It's on a lot of web servers.
It's free, and so it's the infrastructure of, if we're ever going to have any kind of free internet, it has to be this or something like it. And now we're turning over control to sort of a cabal of uninitiated, unskilled people.
Well, the code of conduct it's sort of open-ended and it's sort of non-specific and seems to want to involve agendas and ideas that are orthogonal to the project itself. So to speak directly to your point about, running the infrastructure of the internet, I suppose Linus Torvalds was a flat earther, but, and he was an even more gifted programmer than he is. Is the fact that he's a flat earther, does that diminish his technological prowess in any way? Does being a flat earther have anything to do with the creation of critical code infrastructure for the internet and whatever? And more especially if he kept that to himself, like if he didn't say anything about it and did not, it's like, by the way, I'm going to give you this code. Let me tell you about the wonders of the flat earth.
I mean, as long as he understood time zones and didn't discount that as part of the flat earth, then
time zones are fine.
But yeah, that, and then just replace flat earth with rape apology, and
and then all of a sudden it's toxic.
You find the reason that this is a problem, and that is you don't. And I've seen several really good posts from severely autistic people who are like, "Listen, you want a minority? It's me. I can't even go to McDonald's. I break down in any kind of situation like that. I'm a freak. I can't deal with the world. But in this community, that never mattered because no one asked me anything about that. All that mattered was that I was contributing clean code and accomplishing a goal. And you cannot take this away from me." So here we've got this idea of a code of merit, and this group is directly opposed to merit measuring anything. They say that the meritocracy is the toxicity.
Yeah, the code of merit has been put forth as sort of an alternative to as a kind of alternative to the code of conduct. And the thing that I like about the code of merit, I mean, I'm not saying it's the answer, but the thing that I like about the code of merit is that it's focused around the project. Because I think, Newton, who invented calculus, was a little bit of an asshole. He was kind of self-obsessed, and he was kind of condescending and dealt with you very, very abrasively. If you questioned him with genuine curiosity, he would often take it as you're trying to get one over on him or whatever, at least from historical accounts. And he was like super pissed off at Leibniz because he thought Leibniz had stolen calculus from him. And so I think that the invention of calculus and whatever personal problems that Newton might have had, I think those are different things. And I think that the knowledge, the calculus on its own, is not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. It's just knowledge. And if we buy into this kind of thing, don't we have to retroactively credit Leibniz with the creation of calculus because Newton was an asshole?
Well, there's no question. The Linux community are just, God, they're unbearable. And there's all this, it's funny because usually people brag in terms of sports and things like that. Oh, God, the Linux community. And so that it's been proven that those defects in people don't affect the product. In fact, they might sharpen the edges and make it better.
I like George Carlin. George Carlin's quote, I think, puts it most succinctly, and that is, political correctness is fascism disguised as politeness. And there's a lot in there I can agree with.
There certainly are. There's something to be said that community should probably move more toward not being as toxic as they are. But can you do that at the point of a gun? And I would argue that you cannot. You got to want to change.
I kind of want people that are racist to use racist language so that I know that they're racist.
I mean, absolutely. So it seems like a dark thing, and
I kind of want to know if Linus is a flat earther before I start taking his advice on latitudinal and longitudinal calculations for my GPS app.
How great would it be if he really was? That would be fantastic. Because a lot of people would just trust him on that and go with it.
I wanted to take it even one step further and be like, all right, now imagine instead of Linus Torvalds, it's Alex Jones. It's like you didn't know. Like it's the same guy. Like Alex Jones is doing his Alex Jones thing, but when he's off the Alex Jones clock, he's sitting over here working on, Captain Programmer thing, and he keeps those things separate. Like he's at work, he's got his work face on, doesn't bring up his Alex Jones stuff.
I thought you meant he was a flat earther, and I was like, that's not the most incendiary thing that he's presented. But yeah, if he was like a huge maintainer, that would be hilarious. Yeah. So,
and what does it say about us as people where it's like, if someone is genuinely doing good work, if their good work is diminished or amplified by actions that are orthogonal to the work that they're doing, what does it say about us that we have to know that in order to make those kind of judgments? I mean, that seems crazy.
Well, you're saying us, but I don't think we...
Well, the society.
But see, it's not society. It's a very tiny, tiny group of vocal people who are somehow able to get their way.
That the rest of us don't seem to know how to respond to.
But Linus has, in a lot of ways, capitulated here.
Yes, he is on vacation at this very moment, and so he's agreed to the new code of conduct, which actually is the same code of conduct that Intel has signed off on, and Intel and Facebook, I think, are major contributors to the Linux kernel at this point with staff and that kind of thing. And I think that the list of people that have signed off on the code of conduct there is fairly interesting.
But the problem is ultimately a group of unelected and uninitiated people will become part of the arbitration process when one of these vague rules is violated.
Yeah, the rules are really open-ended.
And now there are some things we should say, just don't just argue one side of this, but you remember the star hug star?
Yeah.
Star hug star is super creepy. And
some people don't realize that, though.
If someone finds out you're a girl and you're getting a lot of star hug stars, or what's equal D? Maybe that's not okay. But this goes so much further than that. I think, and the rape apology thing, I think, is the first best example of. And I don't know what he said, but it certainly wasn't, as overt as I apologize for rapists.
You should go read that because that's really telling. And I don't know, it's gonna be interesting to see how this shakes out. I think that's why a lot of people can, like, if they read it and take it at its face value, there's no freak out. But it can be weaponized, and that's maybe a problem.
And read the Twitter of this girl who champions it. And
the thing that disturbs me about the Twitter is that it seems very us versus them, and it's like,
oh yeah,
who is them?
And the most disturbing thing about it is there is no middle ground. You're either militant with them, or you are the enemy.
So relentless reasonableness is out.
Oh yeah, that must be destroyed. But it is. It's interesting. It's a lot of drama. If you love the drama, now's the time to get in and maybe join open source because you're going to get drama. Now talking a little bit more about business. This is hilarious because how long have we been saying, oh, those Chinese, they've got all the chip making power?
A long time. A lot of people disagreed with us.
But now, Alibaba's saying the opposite.
Yes. Our next story is who needs the U.S.? Alibaba is going to make their own computer chips. Now, remember, we covered a story a couple of weeks ago where AMD has licensed their Zen intellectual property to Chinese manufacturers, and there are already patches in the Linux kernel for those CPU chips, and Alibaba is going to be one of the first customers. Alibaba is basically the Amazon of China it's more of a business to business Amazon, but yeah, they're huge.
And this supports that idea that the internet and the technology world, maybe in general, is breaking up into China's vision and everybody else's vision.
Yeah.
And China wants, they're going to have that walled garden. And if people like, Intel or AMD start saying, hey, we don't want to support you because of your regime, kind of like Google's been forced to do, they don't want that to be a bottleneck. So they say, hey, let's start doing our own thing.
Yeah, and the nice thing about this is that AMD or other companies can just license their intellectual property to Chinese interests. So think about the executive board at Google. If Google's product were more like the Zen intellectual property, they could go to the executives, the business executives could go to executives in China and say, hey, our employees are not really super comfortable. There's like a cultural divide here. So why don't we license you our search technology for you to run on your own stuff, and then we can have a Google China, and we'll call it something else. But it's really running our intellectual property, and you'll funnel money to us for our IP, but you'll control it. And that's probably, honestly, the businesses of the future because of xenophobia and control and all that
Unless
stuff.
A hot war between the U.S. and China breaks out because of the tariffs.
Well, the war between, would not retroactively take it away. So, if you were buying chips from the U.S., that's it. You're done. It's good to go. But if you have shared the intellectual property, they can produce their own.
Yeah, of course. They wouldn't recognize those sales agreements at that point.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So there's a strong economic incentive to preserve the peace, which is perhaps better for the continuation of the species anyway.
But also, the fabrication is still going on mostly in that part of the world.
Yes.
Even if it's Taiwan, you think that those airplanes and boats are going to get out of that port? No.
I have a feeling that if there is any kind of horrible conflict coming, it's going to be a tug of war with China with Taiwan in the middle, and that's not good for Taiwan.
But I'm saying I think because they are closer,
yeah,
they just the products are not going to get to us. Maybe we have to go in and give them some freedom.
Taiwan is to Hawaii as Hawaii is to the United States. It's like new Hawaii. Taiwan.
You think we would? Pearl Harbor Taiwan?
Oh, yeah. No, we wouldn't. We wouldn't Pearl Harbor Taiwan. We would probably Falkland Islands Taiwan.
That'd be tough to maintain, though. That's so close to them. That would end up with Taiwan looking like Syria. So it's bad news for tech processes, no matter how it goes. Let's hope that doesn't happen.
Maybe it's we can get the scientists out and for
Paperclip.
Yeah. But I was thinking about Paperclip for our first story too, because it's if that kind of thing where it's we can't let assholes be assholes. It's we don't the source of the knowledge. It's don't look into Operation Paperclip, the U.S. nuclear program, for God's sakes.
Are you suggesting that National Socialists might not conform to the code of conduct?
Obviously, we have to shut down all the nuclear facilities in the U.S. because that knowledge is,
we
comes from a poison tree.
Never would have gone to the moon. Just start ignoring the moon.
Neil Armstrong is literally immediately facing an existential crisis because, code of conduct.
Well, you spoke about Google, and Google certainly has some things going on in China, but they've also got some more things going on here at home. We all know that Google can read our emails. Now, they're off and on about whether or not they're actually actively doing so. But what you might not think about is how they share all that information with third-party plugins.
Yeah, Google defends its Gmail data sharing and gives few details on how the plugins have violated the rules in terms of like sharing your data, because some of these plugins have to be able to read your email to do what they say. And so apparently Google trusted some plugin vendors and it's like, hey, we're going to scan your email for commercial words. And some of those vendors were like, we'll just slurp up everything. And so that was apparently not okay.
Not only that, but common plugins are things like helping you find hotels and airline tickets, or maybe rating businesses. So not only do they know what's in the email, but then are they giving that to those third parties whose APIs they're hitting to get the ticket information?
Oh, yeah.
So
turns out the answer is yes.
Yeah, and that
or was.
That certainly goes beyond what Google itself would do, you would think, or would admit at least. So could be a little. I would maintain anytime you use a plugin, browser or whatever, it's been proven over and over, you cannot trust those things.
Well, thank God we've got Tim Cook, who will go to bat for us for the Apple encryption, for the FBI, and protect user privacy, and they'll catch things like that in their tracks before they ever happen.
Well, we got to talk about China, right? Because those poor Chinese citizens, they wake up and immediately there's a number hanging over their head, an invisible number. And it affects everything they do, and all of their stuff is spied on, and they get this magical social score. And it's dystopian, and it would never happen. Never happen here.
Oops. Apple is going to judge call and email activity and assign users a trust score.
Trust score? Well, that sounds like a social score.
But they confirmed that, and I love the Inquirer subheadline here. It's like, but the firm won't critique your use of the Desperate Slutty Singles app.
So the idea is how often and how you're sending email, texts, and calls. And that gives you a trust score. So if you're just a normie, you're calling your friends, you're text messaging, and, you know, just a small pool of people, you're sending emails every once in a while, you can be trusted. But if you're sending like 5,000 emails a day, maybe suspicious.
This, you read between the lines a little bit here. This actually has more to do with the advertising industry than any kind of integrity of data or anything like that, because there are a lot of places that run click farms that have just armies of real devices doing real user-ish type activity, like artificial fingers moving stuff on the screen and interacting with apps, just running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because that kind of a farm can actually make money from the ad revenue that they generate from that activity. It's purely fraudulent, but advertisers have no idea, no way of distinguishing that kind of traffic from fraudulent traffic. Well, this will make Apple users much more valuable to advertisers.
And not to mention the text message scams. So you've got a real phone somewhere, but like you say, it's automated and it's just constantly hitting various numbers. Now they're going to know that those devices are going to have a trust score of near zero.
Yeah.
So they have to cycle through them more often. I don't know if they will show that to the end user. I don't know if that's been decided yet.
Probably not.
But that would be interesting if you might get a warning where you get a text message like, oh, this user texts a lot of people. Maybe you should be a little worried. If they offer you nudes, don't click that link.
No, Candy we're such good friends. No.
Don't tell me what to do. She loves me. Well, speaking about Apple, the 10S or XS, if you want to call it that, has been, that's the hot new iPhone that's come out. And maybe not the hit.
Nudes.
Yeah. Maybe
not their monetization.
Not the hit they wanted it to be. And iFixit, who is a thorn in the paw of Apple, have done their usual teardown. Doesn't seem like it's much different.
And so these pictures are beautiful from Engadget. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's much different. The battery, honestly, was the most exciting change. They have this weird L-shaped battery, and there are two of them in the larger iPhone, but only one in the smaller one.
Oh, come on, Engadget. You not make that link?
It's toward the end of the story.
But yeah, it's... here's some more here. Oh, there's the whole thing broken down.
Yeah. So you get the L-shaped batteries. Check it out. That's a weird custom. Apple's making custom batteries. I mean, that's something to get excited about, right?
But for the cost,
yeah,
it is your value is to get the last generation.
I can get a laptop that's going to last 3 to 5 years, or I can get a phone that will make it maybe a year before the battery starts really sucking.
Well, you can't get an Apple laptop that'll do that. Well, we talked about the SpaceX launch last week, and there was a big question. We knew that the mystery person was Japanese. We didn't know the identity, and now we do.
Yusaku Maezawa. I don't know if I got it correct.
Maezawa?
I don't know. He's going to the moon. He's, I forgot what industry he works in.
Oh, he's clothing. Fashion. I like these bulletproof shields they got around him here. Look, what are you expecting here? So he is a big patron of the arts. He spends a lot of money on art. So essentially, I don't know how many seats you can get on the rockets, but he bought all of them. And he's going to invite artists from around the world. He hasn't announced who yet.
To experience it.
They're going to have a free trip, 100% free. And when they get back, he's going to commission them all to make some sort of art based on their moon trip.
Based on the experience. Isn't this like one of the Bond films where like the guy's going to try to cause a super caldera to wipe out all the population of the world, and the only people that survive were the people that he handpicked to repopulate the species?
Moonraker? Is that the one you're talking about? That's the only one I know that's about the moon. But how are they going to do that with
the moon? I don't think the moon was involved. They were just, it was like a, eccentric rich guy gathers up, people that he wants to survive while plotting the death of everyone else.
Oh, okay. Well, I think this would kind of be the reverse. These people are far more likely to be killed.
Yeah, sort of the reverse, the reverse Dr. No, if you will.
Now, the big question is, will Musk go? And he's still deliberating whether or not he will go on the moon trip.
But if there's an accident, how will the world survive without his genius and grace?
That's the question. You're going to lose a fashion mogul, 6 or 7 huge artists, and Musk all at the same. Can we, as a species, can we take that heartbreak?
When they're digging up the remnants of our situation 3,000 years from now, there's going to be an obelisk in the middle of some pyramids where it's like, this is the day that the Earth's culture died. Can we send Kanye?
He would be an artist, right?
That would be something to look for. It would work out either way in that case.
Well, I thought we were going to get away with a positive week of Tesla news because we got, if you count that SpaceX story, that's
good news.
That's positive. And then we have another positive Tesla story, but this one crept in, and you gotta put it in there, right?
This is the same one, isn't it?
Oh, did we do this last?
We did.
Oh,
there was you had another one though.
It's this sort of counted toward both business and so it's all good news in this episode at least. Look at that equal and opposite reaction right there. Boom. So they get a 5-star rating.
So nice. That's really good.
Yeah.
That's a really good crash rating. It is hard to get a 5-star rating. And actually the criteria for getting a 5-star rating changes. Because like what got 5 stars in the 1980s is not even like a half a star now.
I guess it's a good thing that none of them burst into flame.
Yeah.
Because I assume they do that with fully charged batteries, right?
They would have to, yeah. I wonder if a discharged battery is actually more dangerous. Well, not in terms of energy density, but in terms of like, because lithium batteries get weird when they're deep discharged.
Maybe they have to do it both ways. I wonder if they thought of that. I bet they didn't.
They probably didn't.
It's the National Highway Transport Safety Authority, whatever TSA means.
Well, this is not a good news Tesla story.
Oh, that's right.
It's a lull. This one should be a nonsense.
I don't think it'll affect the company. It might.
No.
It probably shouldn't.
It shouldn't.
But I think this was inevitable, right? Is there any chance this didn't happen based on the recent events?
So Musk kind of dared him who was like, well, I said he was a pedo and he didn't sue me, so he must be a pedo. And he's like, okay, well, he filed suit. But they're using a firm out of Atlanta and they only want $75,000, which doesn't seem like enough.
Well, I think that speaks to this guy's, like, he's doing it to prove a point and to protect his name. And he's not being opportunistic. I think that helps his case.
That's probably true.
Because he could have gone easily 8 digits.
Yeah.
Easily.
The law firm that he hired is probably going to cost $75,000, so that may be why he set that.
Well, they'll make Musk pay the legal fees, probably. That'd probably be more expensive than the...
the $75,000.
So if you're not hip to that story, Musk sort of tripled down.
Remember the cave situation with the kids in the cave?
He used the words child rapist in the last iteration.
Well, there goes. He's going to have to be ejected from the company. It's a violation of the code of conduct.
He's a child rapist apologist. And so that was maybe the last straw. Now he's also suing him in England.
Oh, but they haven't announced the terms of that yet.
Maybe that's where he's going for the money. Because that's probably where his bank is, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't want to have to do overseas banking. That'll be interesting. And maybe some bad... I think we kind of already knew this, but it's officially been announced that Saudi Arabia, who owns 5% of Tesla, or 4% or something like that, is also investing in a rival.
Now, on the story where it was like Tesla's maybe going private, wasn't some Saudi Arabian investors maybe the source of that?
They were going to be the bulk of it, I think.
So they're investing $1 billion in a potential Tesla rival to hedge their bets. So you think maybe this investment is because they see instability in leadership at Tesla?
Could be, but they have announced publicly that, all of their wealth is oil. And they've seen a huge drop in oil price in the recent years. So they're trying to diversify away from oil. Eventually, that's not going to be... I mean, we're always going to need it. But we're not going to need it on the scale that we need it right now. Although, we also can't replace cars at scale with current electric technology.
Yeah, that's true. There's not enough rare earth metals.
Yeah. The better batteries could solve that, but do you gamble on that?
I want an electric battery that's made out of cheap carbon and hydrogen.
Maybe we'll have that someday. Saudi
Carbon's
Arabia?
good at storing electrons. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, make it. Listen, you do that, we'll retire.
Technology news. Now we're switching gears.
Well, hardware news. And if you're a laptop gamer, maybe some good news for you.
Vega is coming to gaming laptops with the Ryzen 7 2800H and Ryzen 5 2600H. Now, the H here is even more low power, I think, is sort of what I gather. But I'm not 100% sure. I want to get one to play with it. I want to get one and see what it does. I'm super impressed by the dies that they use in the 2990 are some of the lowest power 8-core versions of the dies. So you can get upwards of 4 gigahertz on like 1.15 volts, 1.2 volts, which is very low. In my opinion. And so basically putting those in laptops, underclock them a little, that should be a great chip because it doesn't, at those low voltages, like around 1 volt, it doesn't produce hardly any heat.
But it also doesn't do ray tracing, which means it's useless.
Obviously. It's RTX off in the permanent off position, so obviously.
Well, do you think they're maybe going to use some ray tracing for MRI images?
This concerns me because it's like NVIDIA researchers generate synthetic brain MRI images for AI research. But like if they're synthetic images, then how has the signal to noise ratio for those MRI images useful to train the AI?
It is interesting because you think the problem is you want to train your adversarial generating AI, right? So the way that you train it is you got to feed it an initial set of images. But we actually don't have enough images of brain tumors. You got plenty of pictures of good brains, not a lot of pictures of bad brains. So this AI attempts to take the good brain pictures and the bad brain pictures and use that adversarial generator to make fake bad brains. Deep fakes?
Deep fakes,
really deep
tumors.
fakes.
About 3 inches behind your eye socket, deep fakes.
So yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like, it's something as serious as brain scans.
Yeah.
Do we really want to trust fake images for that?
This one's not a real brain. This one is a real brain. This one's not a real brain. This one's a real brain. I don't know. I guess that's why I didn't, become a doctor or whatever. It's like, I don't understand how this would be super useful except for just as an academic exercise.
Well, I
imagine
imagine
we did.
as a super pre-screening step, you might catch some people that you wouldn't normally for a second look. But But if you get a lot of false positives, are you wasting time and money looking at those? I guess if you save one person from brain cancer because you get it early, how many false positives is that worth?
Yeah. What happens when you can get it in the Apple headband? Like you get the Apple Watch, then you get the Apple workout headband, and then it's like, brain structure abnormality detected. Go see a doctor.
So you mean when I look at headlines about the code of conduct and
ding, ding, ding,
I feel like I don't belong in this world?
You're having a heart attack. Seek medical attention.
It's like, is there something wrong with my brain that I think that everything about this is wrong? And then they can send a team to pacify me.
They'll fly in little tiny microscopic robots that literally rewire the structure of your brain so you no longer care about that.
Well, Xiaomi, is that how you pronounce that?
It's
Xiaomi?
I knew how to pronounce this and I've forgotten.
Xiaomi?
No, I don't think that's right, but that's fine.
Xiaomi?
They're putting it's a Chinese phone company. They're putting ads in the settings menu of its phones. And
But
they're like, I don't understand.
Well, they kind of advertised as that.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, these are cheap ass phones. We're selling them to you for less than they're worth. You're going to look at some ads.
Okay.
People are upset because they're in the settings menu, which, now they run a specialized version of Android that they have severely molested to make it show ads in the settings menu.
And also report all of your stuff.
Yeah, they're spying on you for sure. But you can buy those same phones at a higher price with regular Android. So I think you know what you're getting. Amazon does this.
I like how The Verge is like, no, this is like a really terrible thing. And it's like, no, you signed up for this.
Yeah. And I think the Amazon one has like microtransactions where you can turn the ads off for some amount of time or forever, which is probably not a terrible way to do it.
Also in the news for the big iPhone reveal is Huawei. Huawei trolled people waiting in line at Apple by giving them a battery pack to go with their new iPhone.
They got a picture of it here. It's great. It says, you'll need this. Oh, this store doesn't have it.
The Huawei phones that just came out the same week or the week before the Apple phones, those have a higher battery capacity and have been tested to have a better runtime than the Apple iPhone.
These people are waiting in line in China for iPhones. And this guy is from Huawei. And these little battery packs here, it says, here, you'll need this. Because get it, they're waiting a long time. And the batteries on their phones are not good. Pretty
amazing troll.
Guerrilla marketing. And, people, that's the kind of advertising that people are happy to get because you're giving them a free product.
I love our next story. I've got the perfect intro.
Okay, go for it.
Well, no. I mean, it'll be after you read the headline.
Well, I'm saying we have heavily questioned whether this is ever going to be successful, and that is the idea of games as a service. No, light consoles, basically shells that communicate with a big gaming server that serves you your game.
So game streaming's latency problems will be over in a few years, CEO says. Zelnick also says closed systems walls are coming down for cross-platform play. So I would counter that headline with a headline of our own. 2 internet bozos decry CEO for not understanding just how poor the infrastructure is in America, Australia, and the UK.
Well, we looked at those stats about rural broadband, and it just ain't going to work.
It's like the latency, like I live in a nice apartment building in downtown Manhattan, and the latency to get from my apartment in this high rise to the server cluster in the basement is plenty fast enough for game streaming. And it's like, but rural Nebraska, a little worse.
They did. Now, Microsoft, when they talked about this, they talked about doing 2 versions.
Yes.
You could buy the whole console, and it would be the usual $500 or $600. Or you could get just like the shell console, which would load things that needed immediate processing. So if it was a fighting game, then collision detection would happen locally, and everything else would go over. And that's probably a better idea. But they're talking about you're simply going to have online services that send you your games, which, as we learned last week with Nintendo's new online service, there's a lot of hidden barbs in that deal.
Yes.
And, of course, with Apple deleting movies last week, are they going to delete your games? Are they going to delete your saves? What if you hit a rough month and you can't make the subscription price? Does everything go away?
It's like when they turn off your electricity, when you can't afford your electricity. It's like you got to pay your bill and there's a re-hookup fee.
And something might have happened to your save games. Don't let that happen again. That kind of thing. Well, another analogy with Nintendo, who have made so much money doing this. Sony saw that and said, we got to get in this game.
Sony announces the PlayStation Classic, a $100 mini PS1. So the thing I don't understand about this is that it comes with 20 games, but it actually is not super hard to get a PS1 still, whereas it's basically impossible to get old school NES. Like you have to get a clone system.
And this is emulation.
Yeah.
This is not, there's no discs involved here. So again, I don't know if a Raspberry Pi can handle PS1 level, but a cheap computer could.
Yeah.
A very cheap video card could deal with this.
Literally anything of the last 5 years.
And instead of 20 games, you get a lot more. So, $100, a little steep for 20 games, I think.
Yeah.
They have not revealed whether or not you will be able to load more games onto this eventually. Nintendo does not add that to theirs.
No.
Which is...
Well, there's a way to unlock it, and then it's...
But then you're just putting ROMs on it.
Yeah.
So, which is what they're doing.
Oops.
Don't kid yourself. And maybe I was not a fan of any of these games, but it is kind of sad to see another video game studio shutting down.
Telltale is shutting down. Now, Telltale, they came out of LucasArts, I think, when LucasArts packed up. And they're shutting down with layoffs because not enough people are interested in these games. They did The Walking Dead and Game of Thrones and some other games. I actually played the Back to the Future games. They were okay.
Well, there were video games about those intellectual properties other than these. These were like the quote-unquote adventure games, which didn't require a lot of adventuring.
Yeah.
It was basically just telling you a story in game format. I think there were some decisions you could make to affect the outcome, but mostly it was just an interactive story.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that can compete.
I would love to get brass tacks on like costs and number of employees and how it broke down and that sort of thing, because I could see managing if you were going to build these this way, I could see that building it maybe a different way could have maybe done it with less people and less overhead, and maybe it would have been profitable.
Well, I don't know, because one of the big things that have come out of this, a lot of the former employees, the employees were told, they were given no warning. They were told one day, they came to work and they were told, be out of the building in 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah, I saw that, yeah. And it was at like lunchtime on a Friday.
Yeah. So a lot of those people have gone to Twitter and they've said, I was putting in 80-hour weeks. I wasn't being paid for most of that. And I was told over and over, if the company's successful, you will be too. And it never happened, and now I'm out of a job. And so a lot of people are sort of decrying that, what we talked about with the IBM thing.
Yeah.
That idea of young, desperate people will put up with almost anything. And here's an example where they got burned terribly for doing it.
Yeah, it's too bad, because I think I think there is a market for LucasArts style adventure games. These were not exactly that.
Yeah, I think they'd have to make it more. But I don't think the current generation, LucasArts wasn't competing with the kind of games that these guys are. Well,
and I think I think they might have missed the boat on making things like more phone oriented, because the Day of the Tentacle with instant save, like you could just close it and come back to it, and Full Throttle and the Indiana Jones. The Indiana Jones LucasArts games are amazing. You should download Scum VM right now and go and find a copy of the go and find a legit copy of the Full Throttle, and there's 2 Indiana Jones games that are really good, and there's a couple that are not as good, and Day of the Tentacle and
that's illegal.
Sam and Max, and play those on your phone. They work great.
That's illegal, and we cannot condone it.
Well, you can if you own it, it's probably okay.
Go to a yard sale, find one of those old CDs.
I still own all. I've got the talkie. I have actually the disc version of Maniac Mansion, which I like so much. I also bought the talkie version, which is crazy for me at that age, because that was a lot of money. But
when you did that, wasn't it weird that none of the voices sounded like what you had in your head?
Yeah, it really was.
Well, I think this headline's a little hyperbolic, maybe. But
it's definitely hyperbolic.
It's dystopian, but when you read into it, it's not as bad as it sounds like.
John Hancock will include fitness tracking in all life insurance policies. So, yeah, fitness tracker to track you for life insurance, and you get a better rate and whatever.
Yeah,
or you can do business with them.
But it doesn't sound like you're necessarily required to hit certain goals or even share your data with them.
Yeah.
Basically, they're just giving you a fitness tracker when you sign up.
You must do this.
Now, if you share your data with them, right now, the way it's set up, you'll get gift cards if you
meet goals,
hit certain goals. Yeah. Like if you burn so many calories one day, when I think some of them are restaurant gift cards, which is like, what's the message here? What are you sending me a Panera gift card after I did like 40 minutes of cardio? What is this? But yeah, they will not have any traditional life insurance policies without this. And it could be someday we see a world where to get life insurance, you got to prove to them that you're doing your part to stay alive.
Wow.
That's one of the biggest life insurers in America. Oh, no. A lot of people comment, it's like, why are you using the AdBlock Plus? We've been fighting the AdBlock thing for so long, and then we're like, oh, okay, we'll do it.
If you want to repeat this experiment, turn your ad blocker off and just go load our one tabs and watch as your browser crashes.
With uBlock or PicoBlock, however you want to say it, the ad blocker will catch this, but not with AdBlock Plus. But anyway,
we're trying to do the toe in the water ad blocker, like not the super effective one, just the light.
But we did manage to read this, and this has to do with Amazon putting fake packages on their trucks
to catch dishonest drivers. This is genius. It's pure genius.
Yeah. So when the idea here is that this fake package is just pure nonsense. It is not in the Amazon system at all. And of course, the Amazon system, they scan them. You get real-time updates, what's happening with your package. So at the end of the day, the driver is going to be left with a package that cannot be scanned and cannot be delivered. So what do? Do you just pop that in your pocket? Or do you take it back to the distribution center? And that's what Amazon wants to find out.
Oh, Amazon, you're so wily.
They estimate their shrinkage is, in the billions. Because so many, such a huge business. And they have said they have already caught drivers who they didn't say they were stealing. They said they were not acting honestly.
I don't have it. I don't know. What are you talking about?
So pro criminal tip, if you're an Amazon driver, don't steal packages right now. And Walmart. Now this is certainly a dystopian future, right?
This story really juxtaposes with the story that we had last time about the Army going after VR. So Walmart is also going after VR, but they're going for Oculus Go.
Walmart's VR is going to be so much better. How sad is that? Yeah, this thing is going to train you. So Walmart's got all these new programs. Like remember the one we were talking about where the online prep is going to be a totally new store.
Yeah.
So you don't know what that store looks like, so you can't train for it. So they just train them in VR.
It's going to be a 10-pack of Marines the Army can just order directly from Walmart that have been trained in VR ahead of the mission.
So they can stop shoplifters with extreme prejudice?
No, I was thinking it's like we'll send them to Kandahar or something, and the Walmart people are experiencing like a high-pressure, like a restock situation, but in reality they're actually, exterminating the orphanage or whatever.
Could be. Now, we often go to O'Charlie's. If you're not familiar with O'Charlie's, it's a restaurant famous for their chicken tenders. And we love our chicken tenders, so we go there a lot. And some days you can get free pie at O'Charlie's. And O'Charlie's pie has okay filling, but the container wrapped around it is disgusting.
That's kind of like this. This is a new Linux distro specifically designed for Windows that has come to the Microsoft store, but it costs $20.
But you can get it for $10 right now. This is designed to be specifically useful within Windows and take away some of the pains of setting Linux up to run within Windows. So this out of the box should be everything set up correctly for all your devices and all that kind of stuff.
You can even run GUI programs this way with X forwarding. And it does away with System D, which actually helps it run a little bit better on Windows, ironically.
So, yeah. If you like pie with terrible crust, go to O'Charlie's or download that from the Windows Store for only $20 or $10 for the time being.
Now, last week we reported that Windows was popping up when you were installing other browsers. And I think we reported last week also that by the time the thing came out that Microsoft had reversed course. Well, CNET's got an article that has more information about what prompted Microsoft to do that. And it was a quote-unquote edge promotion.
Yeah. I don't think this is rolled out to the normie builds yet. But in one of the test builds somebody got a hold of, they noticed this was no longer a thing.
Yeah.
So it seems like they heard the feedback.
Oh, silly. It looks like you're trying to install Firefox. You don't need that. You got Edge.
CNET is quick to point out that Chrome, if you visit Chrome with a user agent from another browser, they also harass you. Not quite as bad as 3 different points and one where they try to trick you with a blue button and a grayed out button. But we all know that the browsers are in a bitter feud with one another.
And our last story, it's a great day for humanity because Japan's Hayabusa 2 mission has landed on an asteroid. And we have pictures from, it was touch and go there for a minute because they landed on the asteroid and maybe it was kind of a hard landing and the asteroid rotated away from where the signal would be transmitted. And so we didn't hear from the space probes for a while. But scroll down, the picture, it's like there's a picture from the surface of the asteroid that's really far away.
Now, I could have told them all of that ahead of time without any of this experience because I've seen the movie Armageddon. And all of that happened in that movie. That was a perfect example.
Where's the crazy guy with the eyes?
The Russian?
Yeah.
Well, this didn't stop at the space station.
Oh.
So they couldn't pick up the crazy Russian.
With the drill, the penchant for drilling.
No, he was the only guy that wasn't part of the drill team. He was just the guy on the ISS. It was a what's the guy's name that blows up all the stuff in movie? He's famous for explosions. Oh man, I can't think of that. But they blow up everything in that movie, including the International Space Station.
Michael Bay.
Michael Bay.
Michael Bay the space station.
That was when Michael Bay. Well, if you have like a curve of Michael Bay in his prime, that would be at the top. And there'd be a little explosion to show that was the peak.
Well, the rest of the technology nonsense, you're going to have to join us on Friday.
We got some depressing security and a little bit of nonsense. But you got to watch the security because you got to know what to watch out for, right? It's a necessary evil. And we'll see you then.
Today's Friday, September 28th, 2018. It's security and nonsense today. Lots of nonsense. Lots of technology nonsense. These companies are up to no good, and they stole our data.
Now, you might listen to a lot of security stories and be like, man, I'm glad that doesn't affect me. But I think this one is going to affect a ton of our viewers.
Yes.
Probably maybe more than any that we've talked about, except for like Cambridge Analytica, which was everybody. But it's Newegg, not Newegg.
Hackers have stolen credit cards in the Newegg data breach. The mechanism for stealing this was just a sniffer on the page that listens via JavaScript.
Yeah, and I believe we've talked about in the past that Newegg runs ads on their payment page.
Oops.
Or at least it did in the past, and that is a bad idea.
That's asking for trouble. But we need that ad analytics. We need it. We must have the Google container on the checkout page in order for us to monitor user behavior and build up personas.
This ran for about a month, and for sure, if you did business during that month, was it all of September or was it?
It was August and September.
They got it. No question about it, because they're getting the raw form data. They got everything. So,
oops.
Time for a new credit card. Deal with that quickly. Now, Facebook obviously wants all of your data. They have been in talks with banks. And they're like, hey, why don't you just show us their banking data? And the banks were like, why would we ever do that? And so maybe they're looking for some more nefarious means of getting that data.
Facebook wanted banks to fork over customer data passing through its messenger service. So, yeah, Facebook really wanted this, I would assume, for their advertising profile, because this is hugely valuable to advertisers. How wealthy you are is sort of like one of the main variables for this new level of advertising.
Well, not only that, but what transactions you've been making. So every transaction they can track goes onto your advertising profile. It's like, oh, bought some golf balls, did you? Now we know something about you.
One of the most successful ad campaigns that I ever worked on was a thing where when you bought the item, it was like, share that you bought this on Facebook. And people were just all about that. It was like, check out, I bought my new golf bag on Facebook. Woo! And because then people would, post and be like, oh my God, that's an amazing golf bag.
It cracks me up when I order a pizza online and they give me that option. Like, what? If someone was polluting your feed with, hey, look, I bought a pizza, how quickly would you get rid of those?
See, I'll tell you exactly what. So it's like I've been that guy. It's like I'm sitting there. I've got my social media logged in. I'm sitting at home alone. I'm just cripplingly lonely. And I ordered that large pizza, and then I post it, and it's like, hey man, you got that large pizza? That's an awful lot to eat. You want some company? I can come over. We can hang out.
You're hoping to bring people in. It's like, oops, ordered 5 pizzas when I only needed 1.
You're laughing, but we just got 5 upvotes.
Butterfingers.
Because those people do the same thing.
That didn't occur to me. But then what if, it's like you really want to not alone, you just get 1 pizza and they still show up.
You don't post on social in that case.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a bizarre world that we live in, isn't it?
The bizarre world of the cripplingly lonely.
Well, the good news is you might not think that anybody's paying attention to you, but they sure as hell are.
This is a different security vulnerability than the one that we reported on in Business News, which was an international incident. These hackers have hijacked surveillance camera footage with the peekaboo zero-day vulnerability. Now, these cameras are not running Windows. These are actually a little bit more secure, but it's still really terrible because nobody knows how to do this.
They're definitely not. So this is a simple buffer overflow that will get you into the video management portion of the software. So this is not you hacking the individual camera. This is the camera control center that malls and banks and government buildings might be using. And you just need to overflow the buffer, and then you're in and you can do whatever you want.
We're running the camera system or mining cryptocurrency. You can't tell nowadays. You can't tell.
They mentioned that this is the kind of thing where you could get in and replace actual footage with just a loop of nothing happening.
You mean what I saw on Mission Impossible can actually happen?
Every kind of movie that's ever done that. You could totally do that with this hack.
Neat.
They have not patched it because this isn't just one company. This is a software that tons of different surveillance companies use. And they all sort of brand it and twist it their own way a little bit. So they don't have a universal patch, but there is a tool that you can get that tells you whether or not you're at risk. So I don't know if that...
If you have a surveillance system, you should go read that article and download it and figure it out.
And if you have a tablet or laptop that has, cursive to text technology, you should worry about this one.
This Windows file may be secretly hoarding your passwords and emails. So any kind of touch input or like pen input on Windows, it will capture the stuff that you type because it assumes that the stuff that you type is going to be similar to what you write.
Yeah, and it stores all of that form data, including type stuff, which is weird, into a single file, which then it uses to compare and try to learn your handwriting, to try to get better at all that. But it's not encrypted, and it's all in one file.
It also doesn't pay attention if you're typing in a password box and think maybe I shouldn't record that.
So literally everything that goes into this file that's learning your writing is unencrypted and able to be grabbed by any sort of malware or anything like that.
Twitter.
It's a bad time to have one of those things. You do have to, if you disable the text to, what is that called? Like, it's not, is it character recognition? I don't know if they call it that, but turn that off and this file will go away. But yeah, Twitter API has had a very interesting bug this week.
It turns out that it accidentally shared DMs with the wrong developers. So like if you have an extension on Twitter that will do stuff, that the extension was able to read from random users apparently through the API. So your tweets or protected tweets or even private messages could be read. So you should get a notice from Twitter if you were affected.
that doesn't seem like a big deal, but if you think about in the terms of like the Facebook thing, if you're tweeting with an automated bot from your bank, for example, and it sends you, or two-factor, you can two-factor through DM, stuff like that.
I could read your two factors.
Bad news. Well, the Zaif, you think that's Zaif is how you pronounce that?
The Zaif cryptocurrency exchange is the latest that has lost $60 million. So it's in Osaka. So, yeah.
This was Bitcoin Cash, and one other. I don't remember what the other one was, but yeah, a total of 60 million. And so they have hot wallets and cold wallets. A hot wallet is funds that are waiting to be moved in a couple of seconds. Like sort of like a slush that you're constantly moving things in and out of. And somebody got into the hot wallet. And there's not any two-factor or anything on that because it's constantly in flux. I got 60 million.
That seems bad.
Yeah, they are going to borrow the money to pay it back, but bad news for them in the long run, I would think.
It's good architecturally if they're able to survive that in terms of like, oh yeah, our insurance covered this. Technologically, they weren't able to steal, it's like we got $1 billion in cryptocurrency and they only managed to steal $60 million. I would consider that a win.
I guess. But is that, does it just start a countdown of them becoming insolvent? Is now the time to get out of Zaif?
It depends on a lot of factors. Don't know.
You got to think they already lost quite a bit just holding all that cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Well, Internet of Things. So, holiday season's coming up. It's never too early to start preparing for that, right? Cracker Barrel has 3 Christmas trees already. What are you going to get your loved ones? Are you going to get them some Internet of Things gadgets, right? What if they're older or they're a bit of a Luddite and it's hard for them to connect their Internet of Things gadgets and understand it? Amazon has the answer.
They're going to make it easier to set up new Internet of Things gadgets. This stock photo is using a microwave and it's really freaking me out because I think that's actually the next story.
You know what? I cut that because this story talks about it. So let's talk about, well, first let's talk about the story. So what they're doing is they're creating a system where your Alexa-enabled home is going to have basically a one-click Internet of Things onboarding.
It's literally like the picture is like, hey, Alexa, I've got a new friend. This is Terminator Skull with teabag eyes. It's like, say hello. And then Alexa and the thing exchange something called like the Wi-Fi locker, like the Wi-Fi credentials locker or something. And then Terminator Skull is enrolled and trusted on my network. And so it's like, oh, the Terminator Skull can now participate in my network. It sounds exciting for old people. It sounds super terrifying if you're into information security.
Yeah. Well, way more terrifying than, and you don't have to know that password. So like old people that just don't know their password, don't worry. Amazon knows your password.
Yeah.
You don't have to think about it.
Well, how long before law enforcement comes to your house and it's like, hey, Alexa, enroll law enforcement device 713428 bleep, and then it's like, oh, now they can just download everything in the cloud.
Including, and this is true, they are talking about an Internet of Things microwave.
So the Internet of Things microwave, I built this like in college, and it was not the Internet of Things microwave. My microwave was it was an IBM PS2E, which is like a little tiny pizza box 486 running Linux with a barcode scanner connected to the serial port. And so in college, I would open the microwave, and the reason for this was because the microwave was if you follow the instructions on the box for the microwavable meal, it would come out wrong. And so I had my own set of instructions and I didn't want to keep up with it. So I would scan the frozen meal's barcode and put it in the microwave, and the microwave, as soon as the door closed, would come on and do whatever was necessary to deal with that piece of food. And I really liked that. That microwave died.
That is not at all what this is going to be. This is going to give you, basically, you can control the microwave with your apps, but there's never a time to remotely start and stop a microwave because you're immediately loading it or unloading it.
Yeah.
And even if you wanted to stop it, like it'll stop on its own and you can just let the food cool down if that's what you're after.
Unlike a coffee pot where, say, you can put the coffee grounds in the night before and then the coffee pot will come on and wake you up in the morning, you can't do that with a frozen meal. It doesn't come out well.
Yeah.
And any attempts to modify the microwave to integrate it into a refrigerator will ultimately result in that microwave no longer being an interesting project and you throwing it away.
But there just is never a time. I cannot think of any reason you would need to remotely connect your microwave.
It's part of a larger strategy from Amazon. They want to integrate the smart speaker into literally all home appliances.
Yeah.
Because think of the data collection possibilities.
That is literally the only thing that this is going to be good for, is telling Amazon how often you use your microwave.
And what kind of, probably they'll put a camera in it so they can see what kind of food you have. Because who would possibly have a privacy concern about the inside of the microwave?
Maybe if they could do like a thermal camera inside the microwave.
There are some nice microwaves that have that.
That could be Internet of Things. I don't think this microwave does that.
I want to experiment with one of the microwaves that does microwave and convection and traditional heating, and it's all like, I've been led to believe that there's like some kind of fancy microwave that will do all that, but I've never experienced it truly in person.
I've seen that in some new homes I've looked at.
Somebody was showing me this air fryer that they have, and it was super, super impressive what it did.
That's a convection oven.
Okay. Well, convection oven. They were showing me the convection oven. Like you hit a thing and it's like cook until it's done, and it just does it.
Air frying is literally a meme. There is no such thing as air frying.
Well, the last time I tried to use a convection oven, I almost burned my house down. So this thing was much more sophisticated than that.
Well, you know what? What if you would have gotten a text message right before combustion? And it was like, hey, I'm shutting down because you're an idiot.
Well, you remember the microwave that I vaporized a potato in?
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure if Internet of Things can protect you from that type of thing.
For the people in the home audience, it is possible to microwave a potato so long the only thing left is the skin.
Not recommended.
Strongly not recommended.
Well, if you're security minded and you want, of course, Google, we talked about what was there, like the Titan or something, I think they called it. But if you're more open source oriented and you want everything to be free for you to look at and pilfer through, maybe the Librem Key is for you.
It's from Purism, so this looks exciting. So you can use this, and it's like a security token, but it's from the people that have that philosophical alignment, I would say.
Yeah, well, everything about it is open. You can look at all the source code, and you don't have to trust. Of course, if you trust Google, you're already behind the curve. But that's out there. You can buy it, and you probably should if you've got some really sensitive things on your PC.
Or if you just have Acrobat Reader installed.
Yeah, you should update that.
There's like 7 or 8 flaws in Acrobat. It's really bad. It's like it's a 0 day, but it's one of the 0 days that's going to lead to a botnet probably. So, of course, this is Friday, so this is probably not timely now.
Maybe we should put security earlier in the week. On hindsight, it's not as exciting as the other ones, though.
So another day, another terrible Adobe exploit.
But you can live without Adobe Reader these days. I think there's enough replacements that you should probably just never even install that. And poor Alex Jones, man, I tell you, every week. Well,
there goes our monetization.
Here's the good news for Alex Jones. Every week he's in the news.
Yes.
I mean, he's getting his name out there constantly. The bad news this week is you're going to have a harder time buying those water filters.
PayPal has banned Alex Jones and InfoWars from processing payments. So, yeah, this is bad.
Yeah, a lot of Alex Jones' money comes from not only advertising, but he also sells a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
He's got the nutrition products and the water filters and a whole, and of course, all the T-shirts and branded stuff.
You know, for all of his tinfoil insanity, there's a certain amount of irony in him being right, because in just the span of a few days, he's completely lost everything.
And that was his prediction.
Yes,
that they would all just.
Well, I think I wouldn't even say it was a prediction. I would say that he was literally saying that all of this stuff is controlled by a cabal of just a few people that make decisions, and then everybody follows suit. And it looks like that's exactly what happened.
It certainly does. And the other thing about it is, we've talked a lot about the war on cash, and this points out that we're coming very close to a world where if people don't like you, even for ideological reasons, they can just turn off your ability to live, basically. Because if he loses PayPal and then he loses all the big payment processors, what choice does he have?
So are you saying that beyond fraud and criminal activity, PayPal shouldn't be concerned about why person A is sending person B money?
Well, they shouldn't. Now, I will fall back on my opinion that PayPal's a business. And they can do what they want. But that's the danger of letting private businesses control all of commerce.
Ah, yes. So it's not feasible or practical for someone to exchange currency with Alex Jones in a secure way that does not involve a business.
Exactly. Right. And so
that seems logical. 'Cause you'd have to use a bank or a money order, which is the post office, which is technically a private entity.
Well, but see,
PayPal
money order, I wouldn't count money order because
it's not convenient.
A lot of those sales, if you have to go to the post office and you got a couple of days to think about it, are you going to buy like the water filter?
So
is that an impulse?
Is the imperative then to create a postal service debit card and payment processor? That could be a thing.
That could be interesting. But then we have the government involved, and are they any better? I mean, do they not also make arbitrary decisions about who turn on and off?
I'm happy with how the post office turned out.
Yeah, but they're so at risk.
They are at risk.
Oh, you know what else is at risk? Marriages. And it might surprise you why.
Fortnite is being cited in divorce papers. Somebody, I guess, did some research on this. And so Fortnite addiction, apparently, a lot of people spend a lot of time playing Fortnite. And it's being cited as the source of divorce for a lot of people.
That's hilarious.
The artwork for that's even good.
Yeah, they do have a nice little... I don't know enough about Fortnite to understand. I guess these are just outfits you can get in Fortnite.
I think the first two are. I don't know what the third one is.
Well, that's... Cupid, I don't know. This furry, I bet the furry one's super popular. What a world we live in. But yeah, people are getting divorced because they'd rather spend time on Fortnite than with their spouse. Unfortunate. Maybe couldn't you game together?
Yeah, I mean,
you could play duos on Fortnite, right?
Well, maybe that's also a source of, because it's like you're not improving.
You're dragging down you're the nubbin of the team.
Well, you got to figure every household is like, the controller 2 household. And so it's like maybe the wife is really upset that she's got the inferior graphics card.
Oh, that's true. And it's time. He's like, you know what I've been thinking about? I think it's time to go RTX on. And she's like, I've got a 7 series. What do you tell you selfish asshole? It's over between us.
Well, we can't afford 2. I mean, our household income, we can't buy 2 20 series graphics cards. That's lunacy. I mean, we couldn't even get 2 2070s.
No, well, it's real. The struggle is real.
It apparently is real.
I think that should be our public service announcement is if you're going to habitually play Fortnite, you have to have an equal opportunity gaming. Some nights you just got to let the wife or the husband, whoever it is.
You can trade machines.
Yeah, right. You hot seat the good and the bad machine, I think, is the way to keep that real.
We had a Washington Post story, but it was eaten by gremlins.
But the title is still there, so we can tell you what it was about. This is the old Sun Observatory story. And we wondered last week.
It's a follow-up.
What will we ever find out what happened? Well, we did, but
we got to set it up for you in case you missed it.
So suspicious.
There's an observatory of the sun in New Mexico, and like Black Hawk helicopters came and they shut it down. They wouldn't tell the sheriff. They wouldn't tell any of the local people what was going on. All the staff had to leave. The whole place was evacuated. It was like
for a week.
It was like a 4-alarm fire.
It was down for a week.
Nobody had any idea what was going on. There was a conspiracy theorist that came out. There was a picture of the sun with like alien spaceships in front of it, and I was like, oh, they could observe this from there. I don't know. Nope. The explanation is far more mundane.
And as is so sadly often the end result of many of these news stories, it was child pornography.
So they sent a Black Hawk and a whole bunch of other stuff for not that reason. The guy, so it was the janitor, they think. Yeah. And they think the janitor had a laptop that he was doing all this stuff from. And because the manager of the facility would just randomly find this laptop all around, like just in different offices that weren't necessarily used, depending on what the season was. And they looked at it and they were like, I better call law enforcement.
Well, they had timestamps too, and it always happened in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So this guy was there by himself all night long, cleaning the place. You can imagine they had some pretty good bandwidth at the Sun Observatory. So he was just bringing in his laptop and plugging it in and supposedly going wild with the child pornography.
So when the laptop disappeared, he said that there was a serial killer on the loose.
Yeah.
And that's what triggered the...
So supposedly him getting weird about the laptop being missing and saying there was a serial killer on the loose is why they brought in the helicopters. But that just, it's a little hard to believe.
Yeah. I mean,
that is a despicable crime, but it's not a violent crime.
Black Hawk helicopters?
I don't know. It seems very suspicious. And
so definitely check out that one tab link to the Washington Post on this story.
Unfortunately, it'll rewrite the URL to just WashingtonPost.com. Damn their anti-consumerist tactics. But it's very weird. And you would assume that they arrested him immediately, right? So then why didn't they open it back up immediately?
Maybe there was a serial killer on the loose.
That's a bizarre thing.
That is a bizarre thing.
Yeah. And if you're a serial killer, is the remote sun observatory really the best hunting ground?
People are going to notice people are missing.
That's going to be immediate. And they have good communication with the outside world. Oh, wow. So let's talk about a couple of science stories. And this one is, it's very interesting because I can't tell you how many times I've been, awake at night. I can't sleep. And I just keep asking myself over and over, what would octopi do when on ecstasy?
Science finally answers that question. So the description here of the experiment that they did is not the clearest, but it sounds like normally when you introduce an octopus to a foreign environment, it's pretty conservative. And so they had a toy Chewbacca, and they also had a caged male octopus. And so it was...
Well, caged... They put a laundry basket on top of him.
Oh, okay.
It was a really high dollar operation.
And so a lot of the time, the octopi would be sort of conservative, interacting with the new male octopus in the laundry basket. And they would sometimes want to play with the Chewbacca toy. But on ecstasy, they would hang out together. And it was like...
They would put their tentacles inside the laundry basket and stroke the other octopus. So just like kids at a rave, when you gave the octopus ecstasy, it got real touchy. That's what they came up with.
Well, they did say that they accidentally used too much the first few times.
Oh, and it just
they were just weak and freaking out.
It began to change colors erratically. Yeah. Can you imagine? Like, you're an octopus. And apparently, octopus have very high brain function. And I've seen a lot of videos where they like unscrew the lids on things and they'll squeeze through little tiny holes, and it's just like, wow, that's an amazing animal. But can you imagine being that creature? It's like, these things are handling me, and this is not what I'm trained for. My instincts don't prepare me for this at all. And then they dunk you down that ecstasy, and your whole world just changes. Well, if you've watched all of the Level 1 news this week, particularly the Code of Conduct episode, and you're just sitting there thinking, you know what, it's time. It's time to be done with all of this. Then this might be a story that you're interested in.
Good news, everyone. Yellowstone has heard your request. This long-dormant Yellowstone hot spring erupts. So I think you're saying that the super caldera under Yellowstone is going to kill us all?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of hot spring activity in Yellowstone, many of them that haven't been dormant for decades. And it might be related to this giant pool of magma that seems to be bubbling under Yellowstone, the caldera. And this is they're not saying it's going to erupt, but if it did erupt, this would be kind of a Pompeii times 10 sort of. This destroys all life probably.
So what you're saying is I should start looking for property up in Maine.
Oh, definitely off the continent. You're going to get as far geographically away from Yellowstone as you possibly can. But even then, the nuclear winter. Oh, you want to die quick or you want to die slow? That's the question.
Maybe it'll turn the Sahara subtropical again.
It might. Or it might just kill everybody, as is predicted. Well, let's say...
Our next story comes to us from the Moscow Times.
Yeah, this is good old Russian. And let's say that you're a young Russian girl and you're pretty, but you're not gorgeous. You can't win the traditional beauty contests, but you might have a chance at this one.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So this pageant, this was pulled from social media after some complaints. I can't imagine why. This is from the Moscow Times.
It was almost over too.
Yeah.
Only a week to go for this.
Yeah. So this went on for a while.
Yeah. So it was.
Was someone in Russia doing this facetiously, or was it serious?
No. This is like a Hitler fan club.
Wow.
Facebook group. So you post a beautiful picture of yourself while you're doing the Heil Hitler salute, and you're judged on your beauty.
Meanwhile, what was his name? His name was Count Dankula. He's still fighting the
one with his dog.
Yeah,
I think
this is okay in Moscow.
No, he lost. He had to. I think he's done his community service or whatever at this point. He might have to do some jail time.
Wow.
But yeah,
so he should have been in Moscow.
Or his dog could have entered this contest, is what you're saying. I mean, there's some attractive women here. I don't think the dog would have much of a chance. But considering
it's just so cute,
considering their politics,
yeah,
maybe a turnoff for some people. I mean, I'm not going to judge. And finally, whenever there's a story about there's one character, and I don't care, every time he's in the news, we will cover it here on Level 1. That is a pledge to you. And that is Pepe the Frog.
The creator of Pepe the Frog has gotten a trial date in his case against Alex Jones. Because Alex Jones was selling a shirt.
Poster. A poster for, get this, $29.99.
Wow.
$30 for a poster?
We're doing it wrong. We gotta get some of those at the Level 1 store.
That's madness. Oh man, PayPal! Think about all the profits PayPal's throwing away by divorcing him.
I thought our $25 mouse pads were kind of high, but they're really nice and they actually cost a lot to make. So.
And this is just a piece of paper. So Alex Jones had a poster, and it was about the election. So he had the faces of like the big players in the right wing people from the election, and Pepe was one of them because hey, Pepe was in the news, but. Pepe's a copyright. You can't just use him. This guy owns him, and so he's going to sue, not Alex Jones directly, but InfoWars, because that's the corporation.
How long do you think it'll be before Alex Jones files for bankruptcy? Like January, February?
I think Alex Jones is making so much money.
You think he'll be okay without all this stuff?
Yeah.
I don't think it.
Well, it galvanizes. So the more he's oppressed, the more hardcore. I mean, think about our audience. We make a non-trivial amount of money every month from our audience.
Thank you, by the way.
And
it lets us do stuff.
And our audience is nowhere near as big or as dedicated as his.
So what you're saying is if we had more convictions, even if they were insane, the crazies would come out of the woodwork and give us more money?
Oh, yeah. Well, in entertainment, you always want to take a stand and, pick a side. And here's the thing about it. We often get... people will post in the comments and they'll be like, you are expressing political ideology X, and it's as often left as it is right. And because of that, I'm unsubscribing and I'm leaving the Patreon, and I hate you.
Stop being relentlessly reasonable. I hate it.
But the Patreon doesn't go down. It goes up every month. And the subscription numbers don't seem to have been affected either. And this is, it's like the Howard Stern thing. You ever see Howard Stern's movie?
Yeah.
Talk about? It's like the average person who loves Howard Stern listens for an hour a day. The average person who hates Howard Stern listens for 3 hours a day. They're not leaving. They're posting their mean comments, but they're not leaving. They're watching.
Well, we're trying to make everything better in spite of the mean comments.
And I guarantee you the blue hairs are watching Alex Jones.
Like the old ladies?
No, the social justice.
Oh, the social justice.
Because they love to get, it's like that it's like hate porn. They're like, oh, I'm going to destroy you, but I need to know why.
Life's too short for that.
He's entertaining, I mean, you shouldn't take him seriously, but he does get worked up over some of these topics. But all that aside, he did not have the right to use Pepe. He deserves this lawsuit.
Maybe now, if things actually do slow down a little bit for him, maybe he'll have time to go back to his open source contributions.
He's going to have to really protect his identity, though, because it's more dangerous than ever if he gets uncovered.
We'll see you next week.